welcome to the Lens at 177, and today joining me in discussion is Hassan Khan, a member of the National Council of Older Persons and also chairperson of PS Home in Suva. Mr. Khan, welcome to the show. And as we approach the national general election, we thought of talking to you about the elderly and the seniors in our community, having our knowledge that you have been working with them very closely. So my first question to you is, how are the senior citizens vulnerable to falling into poverty in any country?
Thank you, Anish. Thank you for having me, and I think it's a great honor for me to be here on this program, and it's a pleasure also to share my views. My passion for working with the elderly goes back a long way, and I started this in Fiji, initiated this program in Fiji in 1988, just straight after the coup. And at that time, one of the persons at the NGO said that, this is another seminar which we're going to have, and it's going to just, or a report is going to carry, collect dust in a shelf, etc. So I challenged him and I said, no, this will become a very major issue in the years to come. And immediately after that seminar, we established a National Advisory Committee on Aging and Elderly to continue the findings of the seminar. And at that time, people talked about the vulnerability of the older persons, particularly in meeting their daily needs, especially poverty and other things like loneliness and children deserting them, etc. It was at that time. So from that onwards, we built. However, from that time onwards, we have been, it took us 20 years almost to get the government interested in, and finally, around about 2009, the National Council of Older Persons was formed. So the vulnerability goes a long way, and one of the things that we're not only talking about elderly as shortage of food, shortage of money, but it's when you look at poverty, it's in its totality. It's about loneliness, it's about life and living, it's about relationship, it's about our spiritual connections. Those things matter a lot in our twilight years. And for the elderly, older persons, this has been there for a long time and still there because it has not been fully addressed by neither. Most of the organizations do a first aid ambulance service. When they find a person poor, they feed him for the day. But we are talking about at that time, elderly are more interested in knowing how to fish so they can feed themselves for a lifetime. So that is the context we are dealing with here.
So has enough been done in Fiji specifically for the elderly and those who are getting old?
I don't think much is being done. Particularly, I want to start at the family level. And I think that is where the difficulties come in, because at the family level, we start, because of ageism, we start pushing our elders back to the back seat and taking over. It's all very well for children to take over, but you cannot leave the older persons behind by pushing them outside from cultural issues, etc. So that's where it starts. At the organization level, most of the civil society organizations have very little service to them. It's like a welfare type of thing, and welfare type of things are only once only. There has been no concerted effort to build or develop the elderly into a cohesive force so that they can look after themselves, they can contribute. People don't realize that now older persons are a major economic force in this country. In 5 to 10 years time, they will be the major contributors in everything. So perhaps better to start now with some government assistance on bus fares, free medicine, and social pension. That came in quite late. I know after 20 years of our talking about it, it's a very reluctant move. Starts with $50 and it's now $100. And it's a very token sum. It's there to, it's a cosmetic dressing. by authorities to say that we are doing something for the elderly. Older persons are being used as a political expediency to say that we are doing something. You know, it's every time, if anything, they just go down to Golden Age home and then dance with the older people, and they think they're doing all. No, dancing with older persons is not doing anything for them. You're not making their life, they're not taking them out of loneliness and out of poverty. So these are the things that matter to the older persons.
From a gentle person like you, hearing these serious comments about tokenism, dancing with elderly persons, you seem frustrated with what's happening with the elderly in Fiji.
Of course, I am frustrated in the sense that I don't think enough is being done. Because I've been at this thing with a great passion from 1988, and I still continue. In the same manner, when I say this, I say the same thing, because for the parliamentarians that they were receiving $50,000 plus all the other freebies, etc., they have, all the allowances, that was never enough. No? They increased their allowances, and that was never enough. And the new parliament will come, they will also increase, that was enough. So why you leave the older persons behind? If the older person is talking about his poverty and all that, fair enough, it's their right. You know, the problem is the issue of the older persons has not been looked as a social right, as an economic right. It was like, Valolama type, feel sorry type. Older persons don't want people to be sorry for them. They want to live a normal, healthy life with everybody, and they want their rights, social and economic rights, to be with them.
So, is it safe to say when you see a picture of a minister feeding an elderly at a old people's home, you get upset about that?
And yes, it's very upsetting, and it's laughable, and it's hypocrisy of first grade. There's nothing genuine about it. It's just all a show for camera, and they've been doing this for a very long time, and that has to stop. I hope the new parliament stops that and treats elderly with dignity and respect, because dignity and respect is missing from the family level right across to the national level, and that is the biggest poverty of this nation, is that you do not provide the dignity, the respect to the older persons, and this is something that needs to be addressed at all levels, at the work level, because people, when they are in employment, they face this, because people are already pushing their chairs when they're about 54 years old, because they're after the chair. So that thing happens, and it's very disturbing to an older person to be pushed out of the system.
Yes. So these $100 per month for 60 years plus, the free medicine and the bus fare, the subsidized bus fare, is not enough. If not enough, then what do you want more?
I'm of the view that no older person in Fiji should receive anything less than $1,500 per month. That is my ballpark figure. There's ways I can justify this, and there's and really, when I say this, is for those economists and people with great financial experience, and people at National and FNPF should be able to look at this thing. I'm sure they know that it is not enough. It is the FNPF who has been telling for last 15 or 16 years that majority, since 70% of the people do not have a savings of more than $10,000 for their retirement. And that should have been an eye-opener long ago. Why is it that? Because because it is the poor wages people have been receiving, the poor salaries they've been receiving. They have been burdened by the cost of living for a very long time, and it's not been addressed. The trade unions ignored them. The trade unions system and the government system, and even the civil society organized system has not done justice to the plight of the older persons in this country.
Let me ask you, with the utmost respect I have for you, the $1,500 you wish that the elderly get, do you want to see that in your lifetime?
I hope it does. I hope the new parliament will be able to address that, because again, I go back to the parliamentary allowance. If they want $1.20 per $120 per day, something like that it is, then you were giving $200, now I think it's $200 per month to the older person, and that comes to about less than $30 a day. Hey, well, how do you justify that? How do you go and sleep, in that, when the majority of the older person, and now the older person's population is 60,000 plus, who are over 60, and majority of them are in dire straits, even those who are even FNPF pensions.
Thank you very much. We'll take a short break, and I will see you on the other side.
We were around when the deed was first signed. We were around when the first car engine roared. We were around when the very first was crowned. Through devastations, jubilant celebrations, and the milestones. We will continue to be around to bring you all the stories first.
Welcome back, and today we are talking to Mr. Hassan Khan. Let's continue the discussion. You mentioned very briefly about the Fiji National Provident Fund pension reduction without consultation. We know it was a public issue back then with the elderly and the pensioners. How did that decision of FNPF affect the elderlies?
I think it affected a lot of us very seriously, in cases like even myself, reduced to 50% reduction in my pensions. I think this all came about because I think few people have had issues with some people. It's about 10 or 20 people who are receiving huge pensions because they were in that type of employment that they saved up, and then their pensions is huge. But for only that reason, the entire pension scheme has been, people have been victimized and affected. And a lot of people who have a very small amount have been affected. As I said, even for FNPF, nobody receiving FNPF should receive less than $1,500 per month, because anything below that it's really a struggle, because the prices of things have gone so high. Even during this COVID time, there were payments. I think there was only one payment right across the board to FNPF, but otherwise the FNPF pensioners have not benefited at all from any of the handout the government's given, or the entitlements that older people are required. Entitlements of older people have not been met. They have not been consulted, and this is it's affected. A lot of them are suffering in silence. Thanks to God, some of them have their children who are supporting them, and these are the things that keeping them afloat. And whatever little savings they've had from here and there. So these are, otherwise, on the whole, they are suffering in silence. A lot of people we have lost a lot of older persons during COVID, and that there are anecdotal stories where people just wanted to leave this world and just die because the medical facilities were not there. The pensions were not adequate, so it was better for them to go.
Let's talk about the COVID era then. It happened overseas. Elderly and pensioners were passing on in countries. Did we come to that situation in Fiji at that time when the wave was at its peak?
Yes, we did come, a lot of people, but again, there has been a silence on this matter here. The facts and figures are not fully published, it's not being shared, it's not being discussed, and a lot of this has been buried with those who passed away, about 800 or plus. And there were others, I'm sure 800 more died, but they were not in the record. And these were some of the facts that, facts have not been opened up, and because of restrictions we have around everywhere, and this is affecting, and it's going to affect the conscience of the people in the long run. I hope it does, because these are some injustices that has happened in the last 2-3 years, and it's not fair at all.
Which people do you refer to?
Well, I think the people themselves know. They should know. They should know, because they have enough intelligence to do other things. They should know this thing too.
That they left the elderly to
high
die?
And dry.
High and dry.
To go and die.
Okay.
Yes.
And you mentioned a case where person, anecdotal evidence you gave that he or she wanted to die.
Yes. There has been not several cases where we hear about people saying that it's better for us to go than to live here and be in poverty and be in every time wanting things and all that, and the family situation is not right, the housing situation is not right, the village situation is not right. So these are the stories that are there, and I'm sure the District Council of Social Services people have got a lot of stories to tell, but again, the verification of that will always be questioned and all that. So this is where I think the National Council of Older Persons has also failed the older persons by doing a proper in-depth study of the plight of the older persons, plus especially during the time of COVID.
Mm-hmm. It's a serious allegation that you might be put on the spotlight for making that claim that elderly were put high and dry. Will you be able to back that up if the case comes for you to prove your point?
I think really what I'm really saying is that there has not been a study or any investigation of the plight of the older persons at the time of COVID. There are anecdotal stories. I am not able to verify this because I'm myself, as an older person, we restricted the movements during COVID time. So it's been difficult for us to go out and fight. But organizations like the Fiji Council of Social Services and others can verify this thing, and they should go out and verify this, because the time is still there for them, because it is about making amends. It is about addressing this in the future. This is why my statement on this is about taking ownership or taking responsibility, that we need to address the plight of the older persons. That is the point that I want to make, and that they are seriously being left behind. And I can, as a member of the National Council of Older Persons, I can say that the National Council of Older Persons have been inactive and impotent organization, because first and foremost, they have not been given the necessary funds right from the beginning to really put themselves up to the necessary staff, etc. And then it is again that goes back to the Ministry of Economy, which has given very token sum to National Council of Older Persons to operate, and this is affecting older persons in general. So it's about the budget processing. It's about taking responsibility for the rights of the older persons. And I think when you talk about the Constitution talks about social justice, and you're not addressing them in the budget in regards to vis-a-vis the older person, then I think there is something definitely wrong in the system that that's being ignored. And that is where I think that those are the things enough for us to say that there is this. For instance, there is no geriatrics department in the Ministry of Health. The Ministry of Health does not have a policy of caring for the older persons. And there are a lot of other cases in the medical world that we can point out that definitely the older persons are not a priority.
So if a political party has to convince you to vote for them, how much money would you want to see in their budget towards the council?
I think the council, in the beginning when the council was formed, it was where the recommendation was of the WHO when it established the council, when it promoted the idea or made the submission for setting up the National Council of Older Persons, was that it should not receive anything less than $1.5 million a year in grants to really kick off. And they had verified that how it's going to be. You have to the officers they're supposed to have. But it started off with only one person, and it was only an appendage to the Department of Social Welfare. And the permanent secretary of Ministry of Women is the chairperson, and that permanent secretary is very much overloaded, and he or she has not been able to do justice to all these things. So really you can't blame a person, But the system, and right from the word go, the civil society organizations put in submission that the chairperson should be a person from outside the system. So and the National Council of Older Persons should be outside the government ministry, so that they can operate independently and look after the older person and not be used as a political tool for government.
Thank you very much, Mr. Khan. We will have a short break and we will continue our discussion after that. Welcome back, and we are talking to Mr. Hassan Khan from the Council of Older Persons. Mr. Khan, I see in your hand here, you are sitting with that from the beginning, is a submission that you sent to ministries, to individuals in January this year, and I also understand you sent it to the Prime Minister's office. Did you receive a reply from any entity or any person in regards to that submission?
This matter was submitted to the National Council of Older Persons, and it was duly accepted as the points raised will be addressed. But since January, there has been no meeting of the National Council of Older Persons, and this was also copied to the Ministry of Economy and others. I have not received any response, and I am not sure whether the National Council of Older Persons has received any response from any source at all. Whether they are addressing this is again a matter of because they have had a change of the welfare officer looking out. The secretariat has been promoted to the post of director of social welfare. There is a new person there, so those are the administrative perhaps difficulties there that may be stopping. But we have not had the meeting, so I'm really in the dark as to what has happened to this paper.
So nobody is listening to you. So why care on this campaign? Why continue on this campaign?
I think it's more or less about reaching out to people with concern, and I hope that the political parties or the campaign will issue some, address some of the issues that are being raised, and I'm sure they will, and they will carry on with, continue once the government is formed by whatever party it is. So there is. And this is why the need for continuation. The other need for continuation is that to bring this issue right home at the family level, because if we can manage this at the family level, it will be good for us and also for the future. And I think the older person is not about what we hear today of the group of us that are here in over 60, but aging is a lifelong process. It goes on. Everyone is aging, and everyone should realize that they will sooner or later be over 60, and they will be affected by all these things. So if we do not take care of ourselves now, in our young age, we're going to be seriously affected in our older age, as the national FNPF has already been pointing out for over 10 years, that the savings are low and it's going to be affected. And yet people feel that, oh, it's okay, they can withdraw their money, and the money will come. The money will not come from heaven anymore. You have to save, and you have to, especially our health, we have to look after, because that is the most costly part of old age.
What about, let's say, for example, an elderly couple living alone, the children are not with them? What difficulties would they be facing now, given the cost of living going up and other associated difficulties they may be facing?
Really, it's unimaginable. If those who do not have pensions, even though if you have a small pensions like the social pension, it's very difficult. Again, there is no one doing surveys or measuring the difficulties that people are going through, and everybody is hoping against hope that things will hopefully turn out, and these are not happening. And I think a lot of these things are very hidden, and until and unless we have a group of an organization, a group of the National Council of Older digging into these things, will not be able to come to any proper conclusion or answers. Otherwise, we'll have we're already having quite a number of issues that again are hidden, and I had a friend who takes out people on this on to twilight tours, etc. And him sharing that, you know, it's really painful to hear the stories. Those who can afford even to go on a little holiday once in their lifetime, they themselves are sharing about their loneliness, about their disrespect that the children are showing to them. It's about being pushed aside in the family, in the cultural system and all that. So again, these are anecdotal stories that we hear, and this has to be verified. And again, this is where why the National Council of Older Persons was formed, to verify, to put evidence based in all these things, to give evidence. And that is not happening purely because of the lack of funds that has been allocated to that organization.
Individuals who have retired 55 plus or even 60, should they be working? We see a lot of elderly working, doing security watchman job at the supermarkets. Should that be happening?
Well, really, you know, when you talk about retirement, you know, especially when you see people, especially when you see nowadays, you know, boats loads of people coming, they're all retirees. They are able to go for holiday. Our people can't even go to Demba for holidays. A lot of people have not even seen the new river bridge. So these are the type of things we know about. And really 55 is a very early retirement age. Hopefully, you know, most of the countries are now taking a view that people can work or should work as long as they want to work, they're healthy to work, they're mentally and physically fit to work, and they should retire when they want to retire. So it will be 65, 70, whatever it is. So that is a good sign, and you know, those who cannot work can retire. And hopefully that, you know, retirement will be, they are not able to, they have to work because they don't have enough pensions. They have to work because they don't have food on the table. They have to work because they are looking after their grandchildren. They have to work because they are even looking after their old people. They have to work because they are looking after the people with disabilities, etc., in their own families and environment. So these are the reasons why they are working. None of them you find that, oh, they're happy to work. Some of them would be because some people like working, and it's good for them to work. A lot of them have gone to voluntary work. Hopefully that would be a good area to keep them occupied and take them from loneliness, and at least give them some sort of mental stability in their old age, because for mental health it is very important. Exercise and work is very important.
How about a healthcare insurance package for the elderly? Will that be workable in Fiji across all services?
Yes, it should be. It should be workable, and that is something that I think has been discussed on and off, but it's never been put on the table, or there has not been anything much written to discuss that issue. Again, that is something that even the National Council of Older Persons need to discuss or address. We have a national policy on older persons. There is no national policy on healthy living and health of older persons.
Finally, Mr. Khan, if the data comes and shows that 80,000 citizens are living in bad condition, elderly citizens, what would you personally want to be done immediately for them?
Oh, it's a very big call, and I, you know, as I always say, that when you're talking about older people and aging, you're not talking about today. You're talking about 80 years back. You're talking about 70 years back. You're talking about 60 years, when the things went wrong. When the things went wrong. Most of the things went wrong is because at one upon a time there was because nowadays say healthy living, it depends on breastfeeding, etc. So at those times that was absent for a time being. You know, it's only in 1970 or late 70s or 1980s when the Ministry of Health started promoting breastfeeding and healthy living, etc. It was only recently, you know, towards the end of the last millennium, that, you know, strong emphasis was being on national combating national, I mean the NCDs, etc. So these things, our education system should be such that we need to start addressing these things right from the beginning, right from the word go, so that we know that what we are as we age, you know, aging is a lifelong process, and as we age, we are going to get into all these issues. So that has to be addressed, and it is for the individuals to make caring for themselves as a priority, because whatever you do to your body in your young age is going to affect you as you go over 40, and that's when you really start, you know, really crumbling and coughing and crawling.
On that note, thank you very much, Mr. Khan, for discussing this issue with us. That was the program for this episode. Join me again soon on another program, another episode that will come your way soon. Thank you very much.